China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. And I also have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. We strongly support your right to determine your own future. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States.
Perhaps ringing alarm bells in many foreign capitals. Mr. Trump refused to rule out using military force to retake the Panama Canal. He said he would tariff Denmark at a very high level if it does not give Greenland to the United States.
President Donald Trump's ambitions include incredible plans to make Canada the 51st state to take Greenland and to take control of the Panama Canal. The president has been talking about all this even before he came to power. The issue of Canada and Greenland seems to have been shelved recently, but it seems that Donald Trump still hasn't taken his focus off the Panama Canal. There is, of course, a fundamental reason for this. The U.S. president argues that the Panama Canal offers the Beijing regime an important resource in the competition with China. Mr. Trump accuses Panama of allowing Chinese troops to control the vital shipping route linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and overcharging American ships. Trump also claims that Panama is charging U.S. ships exorbitant prices and warns that if those prices are not lowered after he takes office next month, the U.S. will demand full, swift, and unquestioning control of the canal. Republicans, for their part, have long objected to a decades-old agreement that ceded the shipping lane to Panamanian control. When Ronald Reagan ran for president, it was disputed that the people of the United States were the true owners of the canal. Donald Trump emphasizes that they bought the canal, built it themselves, and paid for it. He opposes the transfer of its revenues to China. Mr. President complains that Beijing uses the tolls as leverage against the United States. It is believed that Mr. Trump cares about this canal because of its geostrategic and global trade volume features. The Panama Canal is an important maritime trade artery that handles a significant portion of international exchanges, especially for its primary user, the United States. However, amid rising U.S.-China tensions, disputes over the canal have recently resurfaced, following Donald Trump's statements on the possible return of control over the canal. The Pentagon is reportedly exploring military options for the Panama Canal to ensure continued U.S. access to the strategically important waterway following a request from the White House. A document described by the new Trump administration as Interim National Security Guidance urges U.S. forces to look at military options to secure access to the Panama Canal. It is envisaged that the U.S. military's Southern Command will be tasked with this mission. This dramatic step shocked the world agenda. The Trump regime's military option plan over the Panama Canal was characterized as a clear message to China. In response to this U.S. move, important assessments came from Panama.
Compatriotas, como presidente, quiero expresar de manera precisa que cada metro cuadrado del Canal de Panamá y su zona adyacente es de Panamá y lo seguirá siendo.
Responding to reports of possible U.S. military action, the Panamanian government said it would remain firm in defense of its sovereignty amid reports that U.S. President Donald Trump is considering options aimed at retaking the strategic canal. In response to these statements, Panama's Foreign Minister Javier Martinez Acha told reporters that Panama has no alternative but to remain firm in the defense of its territory, its canal, and its sovereignty. According to Javier Martinez, it belongs to the Panamanians and will remain so. So who will remain in control of the Panama Canal amidst all this controversy and the crossing of swords? What can China do to counter U.S. military options over the Panama Canal? For answers to these questions and much more, let's get started without wasting any time. But first, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and give us a like to stay up to date with our content. Let's start with the fact that U.S. President Donald Trump has not ruled out the military option for the idea of taking over the Panama Canal. After Donald Trump suggested this option, the Panamanian side, in order to contain the situation and reduce tensions, shared assessments that there is no Chinese control around the canal. The Panamanian government claims that there are no Chinese troops in the canal. But C.K. Hutchison Holdings, a Hong Kong-based firm, manages 2 ports at the canal's entrances. Experts believe this raises competition and security concerns for the United States. The group of directors of the Americas program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a Washington think tank, noted that C.K. Hutchison would likely have data on all ships coming through the Panama Canal. According to the group, China is using its maritime operations to gather foreign intelligence and conduct espionage. Experts, on the other hand, say that China may be using or exercising a certain element of control even in the absence of some military confrontation. The Chinese side has also made assessments to prevent the issue from becoming a controversy or a large-scale crisis. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said that China will respect Panama's sovereignty over the Panama Canal as always. But can the United States regain control? This is not so easy. The president of Panama, José Raúl Molino, has made it clear that the Panama Canal is not for sale. He also stressed that the treaties establish the canal's permanent neutrality and guarantee its open and safe operation for all nations. The Senate ratified the Panama Canal treaties in 1978. The Trump administration blames China's policies on the Panama Canal for using the treaties. Mick Mulvaney, Trump's former chief of staff, suggested that the provocations were part of a negotiating tactic to lower interest rates. Experts believe that the neutrality agreement even excludes the possibility that Panama could give special rates to the U.S. Donald Trump can put his plan for total control over Panama into action at any time. As president, Mr. Trump could order the invasion of Panama. According to the terms of its constitution, Panama has no army. This could make it easier for the United States. However, experts say that Mr. Trump's military option is merely a form of intimidation. Military analysts believe that if the U.S. wants to break international law and act like Vladimir Putin, it could attack Panama and take back the canal. This is indeed a remarkable term. So what is the history of the Panama Canal that has caused such a sharp tension between China and the U.S.? The Panama Canal has always been closely linked to external powers. The idea of connecting the two great oceans with a man-made canal was first proposed by the Spanish explorer and conquistador Vasco Núñez de Balboa in the 16th century. However, it was only in the 1880s that the French began work on the project following their success in building the Suez Canal in Egypt. The canal was eventually built by the United States between 1904 and 1914 after a failed attempt by the French to build one. The construction of the canal was a major undertaking. It cost the Americans about $375 million, the equivalent of about $13 billion or $105 billion in today's money, making it the most expensive construction project in U.S. history at the time. The U.S. also spent an absolutely vast amount of resources on the construction, maintenance, and successful operation of this major international waterway. Of the 40,000 workers who constructed the canal, more than 5,600 died from accidents and illnesses. The canal was completed during the U.S. presidency of Theodore Roosevelt. From the start of the U.S. project until 1979, the Panama Canal and its surroundings stretched 5 miles on each side. It remained a de facto U.S. territory under the Panama Canal Zone Treaty, or the Hibernal-Varilla Treaty as it was officially known, and the U.S. government administered the canal for several decades. The U.S. and Panama would have joint control over the canal for the next 2 decades until the U.S. handed it over to Panama in 1999. The U.S. control of the canal at the time created significant tensions with Panama. In 1964, anti-American riots broke out in the U.S.-controlled canal zone. The riots led to a renegotiation of the Panama Canal treaties. 1977, U.S. President Jimmy Carter and Panamanian leader Omar Efraim Torrijos signed the Torrijos-Carter treaties. The treaties guaranteed the permanent neutrality of the Panama Canal. After a period of joint detention, the treaties called for the United States to relinquish control over the canal by February. Panama, as we mentioned, took full control in 1999 and has operated the canal ever since through the Panama Canal Authority. Mr. Carter, who died on December 29th, always saw treaties as signature achievements, and they featured prominently in his obituary. In a bizarre accident of timing, James Fallows, who was Mr. Carter's speechwriter at the time and who accompanied the president on that 1978 trip to Panama, testified that they had a president who dreamed of taking back the canal at a time when the world now recognizes the canal transfer as an important part of a late president's legacy. Now Trump wants control of the Panama Canal back. Trump's supporters argue that the United States also helped to create Panama. This is actually true. In addition to taking part in the construction of the canal, the U.S. also played a role in the creation of the state of Panama. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Isthmus of Panama was part of Colombia. When Colombia rejected a proposed canal agreement, the U.S. government encouraged a rebellion. The northern provinces of Colombia seceded, and the Republic of Panama was created. The United States Navy then prevented Colombian troops from crushing the rebellion, so the U.S. had guaranteed the integrity of both the canal and Panama. One of the main reasons behind Trump's dreams of controlling the Panama Canal, of trying to undo all the efforts made by the United States in the past, is Washington's desire to shorten routes for maritime trade. The Panama Canal is used to shorten the length and duration of ocean voyages between the North Atlantic countries and the North and South Pacific countries. On a voyage between San Francisco and New York, a 10-knot freight steamer can save 2 days by using the Panama Canal instead of going through the Strait of Magellan. 16-knot passenger ferry can make the journey in 20 days less time by using the Panama Canal. The savings in time and distance would be greater for New Orleans than New York because Gulf ports are closer to the canal than Atlantic ports. From New York to the major nitrate port of Iquique, 9 and 10-knot freighters save 23 to 21 days by using the Panama Canal instead of going through the Strait of Magellan. Even for Valparaiso, the main port for Chile's agricultural department, a 10-knot ferry from New York can save 15 days by using the Panama Canal. In general, using the canal saves 13,000 kilometers and 22 days. Of course, there is also the cost side. It is claimed that ships passing through this canal pay up to $400,000. It is said that 100 million tons of fresh water is used for the passage of a ship. This is among the factors that increase the cost of passage. For all these reasons, Donald Trump does not want U.S. ships passing through the Panama Canal to bear these heavy costs. In a statement, the U.S. State Department announced that the Central American country had agreed that it would no longer charge U.S. government-owned ships to transit the canal. The move was expected to save Washington millions of dollars a year. However, the Panama Canal Authority, which is at the center of the diplomatic storm created by Trump's highly controversial stance, issued a statement to the contrary. The Panamanian presidency also confirmed this statement. President José Raúl Molino denied that he had made an agreement that U.S. ships could pass through the Panama Canal for free. This shocking move distracts the United States from its plan for control over the Panama Canal and frustrates Donald Trump's hopes for Panama. The focus has now completely shifted following the shocking statements by the President of Panama and the Canal Authority to Donald Trump. Experts are now wondering what Trump will do next about the Panama Canal, because Donald Trump will probably not remain silent after this harsh reaction from the Panamanian government about the canal. The possibilities that Trump might take this stance were already evident in the first days of the leader's rule. Today, it is already known that the military option is on the table and that Trump may have different plans, but it is still unclear which one he will choose. There are those who believe that diplomatic channels are still open. It is expected that Trump will pursue a more repressive strategy towards Panama. But U.S. leader Donald Trump's pressure to regain control of the Panama Canal could lead to other problems. Trump's request seems to have the potential to seriously drive a wedge between the United States and Panama. Panama and the United States have had a special relationship over the years. The United States recognized Panama as a state on November 3rd, after Panama declared its secession from Colombia. On November 3rd, diplomatic relations were established. In November 3, just a few days after they declared their independence, the United States and Panama signed the Girona-Varilla Treaty. Diplomatic relations between Panama and the United States were re-established on 4/03/1964 with the Moreno Bunker Joint Declaration. In October 1968, a group of soldiers overthrew President Arnulfo Arias Madrid and came to power, leading to changes in the country's foreign policy. Panama then assumed its role as an independent country and launched an aggressive and active diplomatic campaign before the main international organizations and forums. As a result of this diplomatic process, it was possible for the UN Security Council to meet for the first time outside its headquarters in New York and adopt a historic and comprehensive resolution in support of Panama's sovereignty claim against the United States. Then, in the face of complex negotiations, the Tykes-Kissinger Agreement was signed on 02/07/1974. This agreement was the basis that would dictate the guidelines to be followed in the negotiations that became known as the Torrijos-Carter Treaties. In the relations that have continued to this day, the U.S. side has become one of Panama's most important allies. Very important relations have developed between the two countries. The U.S. regularly provided aid to Panama. U.S. assistance to Panama was aimed at ensuring that Panama was a safe, prosperous, and democratic country that continued to partner closely with the United States. The United States and Panama have long worked together to advance common interests, including improving citizen security and strengthening the rule of law. The United States and Panama have signed a bilateral investment agreement and a trade development agreement. The trade agreement significantly reduces or eliminates tariffs and other barriers to U.S. exports. It also promoted economic growth, set high standards for the treatment of investments, provided a framework for resolving investment or trade disputes, and expanded trade between the two countries. U.S. exports to Panama included oil, machinery, aircraft, agricultural products, and consumer goods, and accounted for 25% of all goods and services imported by Panama and 60% of all food imports. In addition to bilateral trade, Panama facilitated trade as a transshipment hub for all Western Hemisphere economies, including the United States, creating an important service-based economy in the country. The expansion of the Panama Canal in 2016, which allowed the passage of larger new Panamax vessels, brought significant benefits to Panama and many U.S. East Coast ports. The U.S. was the #1 user of the canal, with 72% of all transits going to or from U.S. ports. In 2022, trade in goods between the U.S. and Panama totaled $12.5 billion. The United States provided more foreign direct investment to Panama than any other country, with a total direct investment position of $3.8 billion in 2022. The energy and infrastructure, finance and insurance, and wholesale trade sectors led U.S. direct investment in Panama, while the real estate and wholesale trade sectors led Panama's direct investment in the U.S. Now, with U.S. leader Donald Trump's desire to take back the Panama Canal, all these important relationships and dynamics between the two countries could be damaged. It would only benefit the Xi regime if the U.S. and Panama, with such an important relationship, were to face off for control of the canal in the future due to China's influence. If the U.S. exceeds the proportionality of its pressure, Panama may move closer to Xi. On the other hand, if the Trump regime finds a middle ground and makes a deal with the Panamanians, Mr. Xi's influence over control of the canal will be diminished. Of course, the possible deal between the U.S. and Panama would be tolls that would relieve Trump and even the entire U.S. maritime trade. Apart from all this, there is also Trump's military option plan as mentioned in the video. Time will tell which scenario will materialize or not. Thank you for watching.